Alrighty, good afternoon. Welcome everyone. If this is your first time joining us in this new platform, you can see on the upper right there are some resources, the worksheet and the program overview. You can also ask questions in that box below that. Some of you already have. Thank you for joining our Leadership Success Navigator webinar series. We have David Liddell, President and Founder of Sky Business Solutions, here to present today's webinar, Leading with Influence, Not Power. David is an executive coach and leadership development expert. He's going to entertain you in this next hour and provide you with some tips and techniques that will improve your leadership skills today. Please welcome David Liddell.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. Hopefully everyone has dug out from the snow, or maybe you're still digging out. Sorry we had to reschedule from last week, but we felt it was a better use of our time when things weren't as hectic and snow-filled. So thanks for joining us. For those of you who have been through our webinar series in the past, this will be a little similar to last year. However, what we're doing is we're going to mix it up a little bit this year. We're going to have new topics every month. So instead of a series of 4 running, repeating itself throughout the year, we're going to have a new webinar every single month that is related to leadership in one fashion or another. This is how it works. This is going to be a 60-minute webinar. We're going to keep it on time. At most, we might go over a minute or two, but we know how busy people's schedules are, so we're going to try to keep it as crisp as we possibly can. Everybody should have downloaded the worksheet by now. It would have been sent to you, and there's the ability to download it right from this window here. So do make sure you get your hands on that, and I'll explain how I'm going to use that as we go forward in a little bit. The first 45 to 50 minutes will be going through the webinar itself, and then at the end we're going to open it up for Q&A. So if you do have questions, Joe, who introduced me, will read those at the end. I will answer them real time at the end and try to provide the best answer. Just in the interest of keeping the webinar running smooth, we do have everybody muted, and that's why the Q&A window is very important to you at this point. We will also make this webinar, the recording of the webinar, available to everybody. We'll provide the download, the audio, and the video, so everyone will have this if you want to share it internally or just refer back to it at a later time. So I'm going to open up with sharing my, let's see here, just bear with me. This is a new platform, so hopefully it's not, meaning the Adobe Connect platform. We moved from another platform, and we're getting used to this one, so bear with us if you don't mind. So this is the topic, leading with influence, not power. I think that speaks for itself. Depending on where you are in your leadership position, or if you're an individual who actually trains others, I think you understand where we're going to go with this. But as I play this out today, what I'm trying to put emphasis on is how important influence is in a leadership role, and that authority as a leader does not come from power, although sometimes people feel the title implies power, and there really isn't any power there. You have to earn it. You have to earn the authority, and that's achieved through influence. Oftentimes I'm asked by people, hey, do you have to be a bit of a jerk at times to be an effective leader? And of course, we're going to answer that question today, and I'll leave that up to you to figure it out for yourselves as you go through this, but I think you're going to get a pretty clear message as we go through it. What I'd like to do is I'd like to start with a question for everybody. Now, I know you can't answer me, but this particular question will be for you to think about for yourself. And in a minute, I'm going to share a number of characteristics, and I want you to see if you can guess who this individual is. And I'll just give you a moment. You can see that some of these characteristics are not terribly flattering. If you have somebody in mind, think about it. You can even write it down if it makes sense. All right, so if you guessed Steve Jobs, you're right on. And you can see here that there was actually a biography written by Walter Isaacson, and this particular biography, this was conducted over a number of years, more than 40 interviews with Steve Jobs himself, as well as interviews with hundreds of other people, including family members, friends of his, adversaries even. So maybe some of those comments came from adversaries, but there was a common understanding that they were really quite amazed at how much, and as it's written here, how much of a jerk he was. And you wonder, how can somebody who was a jerk, how could he be so successful? So what we're trying to display here, what I'm trying to share with you here is, yes, you can be demanding, you can be determined, you can be many things, and even being a jerk at times means you can be successful, of course. But do you have to be a highly successful leader? And I think there's a number of things to think about here as we go through it. But before we dig in too deeply here, let's go to the next slide. I want to ask everyone a question on the line. Who are these people? Now, if you're sitting in a conference room with one another, feel free to talk about it. Do you recognize the people listed on the screen here? The fourth one might be a bit of a slight giveaway because of the last name. These were all CEOs of very successful companies at their time. You'll notice one of them is out of business today, Circuit City. But these were companies that were, at the time, doing very well. They were considered highly successful. And the success of the organizations were greatly due in part to their leaders, their CEOs. And if everyone's familiar with the book Good to Great, the Level 5 leadership coined by Jim Collins, each of these 5 people, these 5 CEOs, actually were given the Level 5 leadership title. And there's certainly a reason for that. But let me pick one particular leader for a moment, Coleman Mockler. He was the CEO of Gillette between 1975 and 1991. And most of these people you've never heard of because they're not the big names. It's not about them. They're not openly gregarious in any respect. Actually, these are people who tend to be more humble, and you might even say quiet to themselves. But what you'll find here with Coleman Mockler back during the period when he was there at Gillette, he faced a number of takeover attempts, but he was how they characterized him as a reserved and gracious individual with a real gentle manner. And oftentimes you don't connect those characteristics or descriptors with somebody who's a highly successful, driven CEO. But even at the height of the crisis that he was in, or a number of the crises that was him, he was always calm, kind of a business as usual demeanor, and he really fought for the greatness of Gillette. I mean, today they're owned by a bigger, Procter and Gamble, but they are still Gillette. They haven't lost who they are. And I actually know somebody who works at Gillette and travels around the world for them. He said it's still the same company that it was even when they were on their own. And it's interesting, Mockler could have cashed out a long time ago, and instead he stuck with the company, made sure that the greatness that he wanted this company to endure did. And just kind of interesting that you don't have to be an outgoing, gregarious type like a Lee Iacocca or Lou Gerstner or Jack Welch from GE. I mean, these are people who you do recognize the names, but they weren't given the Level 5 leadership tag by Jim Collins. They were actually given the Level 4 leadership. They did achieve tremendous success, but they didn't achieve the two sides of Level 5 leadership. The professional will, which is all about really delivering on results, ensuring that outcomes are driven, making sure the company's values are there, driving the organization to achieve. It's that determination, that professional will. And a big piece of that is that these individuals, they looked in the mirror for responsibility. They didn't provide they didn't assign blame to others, and that was a real big deal. The personal humility side was really all about being focused, calm, determined, and when providing credit was really looking at others. But there was a humility, a modesty that went with it. And these are the sorts of things you wouldn't call these people a jerk. You wouldn't call them overly aggressive, but very quietly, very quietly they did things and achieved all by themselves in a respect that people would look at them as maybe not even charismatic. Because that's another question we get. Are people, are highly successful people or highly successful leaders, do you have to be charismatic? And the answer is no, not necessarily. Based on what we're reading here, you do have to have, you do have to be humble, but you do also have to be confident in your ability to achieve. So just something to think about as we move forward. So the question is, do you have to be a jerk to be a highly successful leader? And for me, the answer is no, you do not. That doesn't mean our inner jerk doesn't come out once in a while. We all have stresses in the workplace. We all have demands. Depending on where you are in the chain of command, if you're a very senior level, the pressure is intense. And for those of us who have that type of personality, sometimes that inner jerk factor can come out at times, but it's really not necessary. It's really not necessary if you want to be highly successful. It's really about focus, it's about understanding people, and it's making sure the business is succeeding. So leadership is easy in most respects until it's difficult, and we all know that. For those of us who are, for those of us and those of you who are on the line listening, and you know when you're having a tough day, there are many things that do come across your desk or you're faced with every day. And when things are running smoothly, you're not really being tested. We call them key moments. When we're training our leaders, we talk an awful lot about key moments because those are the moments that will test you, will demonstrate when you're being strong as a leader and helping others succeed. If you think about some of the challenges you face every day, there's always tough decisions. Change is constant in the organization, and it's not necessarily can you handle the change, but it's all about change related to others. Can they handle change? And can you keep others, in the case of leaders, can you keep employees motivated? And can you keep them focused on results? The results is the key piece. I mean, it's great that we all come to work every day, we work hard, but are we achieving the results that we need to? So think about your business. Think about the people around you. Think about the days that you have. And what I'd like to do here is we have a feature here. It's a poll question, and I'd like to open it up for those of you to jot in your answers. And you could put them in any time. But I'd like to know, what is one of the biggest leadership challenges in your company today? Just jot your answer in. I'll see them. What I'd suggest you do is don't put your name down. We'll publish the results later on. We'll show the we'll show the results later on to see what others are facing. So please jump in there and provide us an answer so that we can share with others on the line. All right, so hold on one second here. All right, here we go. All right, so what I'd like to do is I'd like to talk about leadership, a definition of leadership. Now, there are many out there. For the purposes of this particular webinar, I'd like to share this one. It's a process of social influence in which one person can enlist the aid and support of others in the accomplishment of a common task, objective, or goal. And I've underlined social influence to think about some of the things that leaders face. It's easy to tell people what to do. Influencing them can be far more difficult because it can be more subdued. It can be more subterranean. It's one of those things where, we say, hey, it's easy to tell people what to do. Why can't they just do it? Well, a lot of it has to do with how it's communicated. and how people are motivated. So let's continue on that thought. So the number one differentiator between being a good leader and a great leader happens to be influence, your ability to influence others. And that's the key here. So as we think about influential leadership skills, I've listed 5 here. Being inspirational. Anytime I poll a group of people and I ask about what makes a leader great, or what is a characteristic of a great leader, being inspirational or inspiring others always comes up there. Presence. Presence isn't necessarily about being noisy and loud. Presence is about being confident, having something to say, and making sure people are hearing you. Awareness, that's awareness of yourself and your surroundings. Certainly being collaborative, we can't get it all done ourselves. We have to do it with groups of people. And then trustworthy is absolutely critical. These are 5 top influential leadership skills that we run into every day, and this is what we teach our client organizations. You know, what should they be thinking about as they build strength and leadership capability? Oops, don't want to go that far yet. Let me just back up 1 second. So the question I have for you is, what is common to each of these skills? And if you think about what is common, it is influential communication. And we talk about being inspiring, we talk about being influential. Well, it really all comes down to influential communication itself. It's not about what you say, it's about how you say it. So hey, feel free to jump in there. Don't forget about our poll question. I can see some more coming in. Let's get as many as we can. Some of the answers coming in are quite interesting so far. But let me talk about these 5 elements, and these are the 5 things we're going to talk about for the rest of the session. I'm going to be watching the clock carefully so that we don't get too far ahead of ourselves or too far behind, because I want to make sure I get everyone out on time. But the first one is self-awareness. That is aware of yourself and the impact you're having on people in the organization. It's people's reactions. It is how people are functioning, their behaviors. So think about self-awareness in terms of, do you see yourself? Are you introspective? Number 2 there, effective listening. Couldn't be more important. I think by far the most underutilized leadership skill that's out there. And we're all guilty of it. We all have something to say. We all want to be heard and understood. And as a result, listening doesn't come forward often enough. And it takes patience. And for those of us who don't listen well enough, it takes determination to make sure we're listening more carefully. I'll touch more on that soon. Understanding your audience. If you want your audience to understand you and to hear you and to be heard, you have to understand them. You need to know how to appeal to your audience, which means a lot about motivating, or what motivates individuals, and everyone's a little different. Number 4 here, clearly articulating your point of view and message. And there's many things that can get in the way of articulating your message. And it has less to do with your words, and it has more to do with you, your surroundings, and how you make yourself available to others. And then the final one is when we talk about achieving a mutually positive outcome, that has to do with intent, and that means your intent. What are you trying to achieve when you're engaging others, whether it's a team of people, an individual? Are you trying to get to a common ground, or are you trying to win? We are ingrained as individuals to win. If there are any Patriots fans on the line, which I'm assuming there are, anybody who watched the Super Bowl, you wanted to win. And it's part of our culture. It's part of how we operate. It's how we see ourselves. It's how we run our businesses. But when you're trying to work in a collaborative environment, it's not about winning in that respect. It's about collaborating. It's about finding common ground and a synergy, meaning the 1 + 1 is greater than 2. It drives innovation. So we'll talk more about that in just a minute. I do want to remind folks, this would be a good time to, hang on 1 second here. I'm having a little bit of trouble with my PowerPoint. Well, anyways, if you do have your worksheet, you'll notice, if you have a look at it, you'll notice on the worksheet there are 5 items there corresponding to the 5 items on the slide right now. What I'm going to ask you to do is we go through each one of these. What I'd like you to do is I would like you to rank yourself. You're not going to share this with anybody else, so I would say be brutally honest with yourself. 2, write down some things that you might be able to do to improve in these particular areas. This is also something you could share with others in the organization, or even a workshop you could run internally. And if you wanted us to run it, let us know. But do take the time to jot down and how you rank yourself in these 5 areas. All right, self-awareness. So what that means is it's a powerful mental state, meaning your mental state, from which you respond rather than react. Now, I'm sure we've all been in a position where we wanted a do-over. And I don't mean standing on a tee box and calling that a mulligan in golf. What I'm talking about is you didn't handle a particular situation the way you wanted to. You look back, you said, boy, I wish I could have done that over again. And that is what we're talking about here. That's reacting versus responding is, did I respond in the fashion that's going to get the best result? There's good news and bad news with reacting and responding. And the biggest, you're not going to die from a reaction, but you're going to have a better outcome with a response. And the difference between the two is about half a second. You have about half a second to make your decision based on the way you feel in a particular situation and how you respond. Very, very critical. But there are 3 key pieces to awareness or self-awareness. 1 is being completely alert about your surroundings. What's happening? What's the context? This could be the mood of the day, major business situations, or anything that's related to others around you. Second item about awareness is being present, meaning are you as an individual, are you aware of your own moods, your own situations, what's going through your head? And there's actually a great book out there. I'll recommend it. It's called Leadership and Self-Deception. It's by the Arbinger Institute, and they talk an awful lot about a concept about being in the box. I'm not going to share more than that. I recommend that you read the book. And it's all about, a big chunk of it is about awareness of yourself and how you view the world. And so being present is really being present in the moment and being curious about what's going on around you and what's important to others. And then finally, focused. Stay focused in the moment. All of us, we're juggling many different balls. We have a large amount of activity going on every day, priorities, decisions, things we've got to get done now. When you're communicating, when you're being self-aware, when you're working with others, being focused on that particular moment in time and letting the people around you know that is the most important thing you're doing at that time. So if you're thinking about yourself and looking at your worksheet, have a look at that self-awareness item and give yourself a grade on where you are. And I'm going to talk a little bit, it's connected, I'm going to talk a little bit about emotional resilience. So I'll just give you a minute to jot down a ranking for yourself, what you might be able to do to make some improvements. Another 10 or 15 seconds here. All right. Hopefully you've jotted something down. Let me just share a little bit. Before I talk about emotional resilience, let me talk about why we have a worksheet. It's great that you're taking the time out of your busy day to sit down and listen and learn about what's going on relative to leadership influence and not focusing on the power aspect. But if you're just listening and you're not taking any action after today, then is it really having an impact? So that's why we do this. That's why we have the worksheet. You have the opportunity here to look at 5 different areas about yourself and make an improvement that you can look at and consider immediately after today's webinar. And that's what we hope you will do. And you may not go after all 5 areas. You might find yourself to be perfect in 4, and you have to work on 1. That's great. But as long as you take one thing away from today, that I know you spent your time wisely, and that's really important to us, because we know how valuable your time is and how important it is for you to grow professionally. So do take the time after today to think about what you're writing down on this worksheet and seeing how you might be able to apply it. And by the way, don't forget, if there's any more answers for our poll question, please write them in. I want to get as full a list as possible. All right, so let's talk about emotional resilience. People have heard of the term emotional intelligence, coined by Daniel Goleman. He wrote a book called Emotional Intelligence. He also wrote a book shortly after that called Primal Leadership. That's another good recommendation if you're into leadership books. But the whole idea is how you manage your emotional energy. And I'm not talking about emotions. Some people don't show their emotions. Some people show them, it's all over them. But when I talk about emotional energy, it's really about your passion, your drive. And for some, it comes out in emotions, and people react very quickly. And for some people, it doesn't come out. It comes out in different ways. Sometimes there's passive aggressiveness. Sometimes there is people get shut down. There's a lot of different ways. The key here, and it relates to self-awareness, the same topic we're on here, is really understanding yourself. Because you'll see in this slide here, we have the stimulus. That's the real world coming at you, which it does. And then your filter, the way you see the world, that's your emotional resilience. How well do you handle that? And it either ends up in some sort of reaction, oftentimes a reaction you don't want, or a response that's going to put you in a good place. So the emotional resilience has a lot to do with the way you see the world, your conditioning, and that can be anything to do with the way you were brought up. Could be your ethnicity, your experiences, how you're wired. Your chemical makeup. We're all wired a different way. I mean, that's things like your personality and what motivates you and your core behavior. It could be your education. It could be your religion. But all of your past experiences up until this point have conditioned you to see the world a certain way. We don't all see it the same way, and we react or respond differently. Just because we're different doesn't mean we have to all respond the same way. I'm not suggesting that. What I'm suggesting here is know yourself. Understand for yourself what it means, what it means to react or to respond based on the situations around you. And the more you know yourself about how you're going to react, what drives you, what your derailers might be, the better it's going to be, because then you know when to deal with, what to deal with if there's going to be a challenge. So the key here is know yourself, look at the world as objectively as possible, and plan out the response. Here's the thing. That can happen in over a course of half a second up to just a few minutes. Most of the time, as leaders, we are faced with challenges and decisions that require an immediate reaction, and that's why the self-awareness piece is so important. All right, so let's talk about listening. Now, I know you're on the line here, and for those of you who are listening carefully, I'm going to have an exercise in just a moment. But the definition of listening, and this is, like I said earlier, this is the most underutilized skill that leaders have in their arsenal today. It's underutilized because there's so much pressure, there's such demand to get things done, and oftentimes people say, yeah, but I just don't have the time. Well, lack of listening, lack of focus, and paying attention to others is a massive, massive derailer. So listening is the ability to accurately perceive a message conveyed by another person. It doesn't mean you don't hear the noise coming out of their mouth, but are you getting the message? So I have an exercise for everybody. I'm going to give you a quick exercise. I know we can't interact here, but you'll get the point of this exercise. So I'm going to ask you a few questions. Actually, I'm going to ask you a question at the end of a short story about a bus driver, and I encourage you to take notes here, okay? So, there are just 5 points I want to read out to you. You are the bus driver at stop number 1. 3 people got on the bus. One of them was wearing a red hat. At stop number 2, 4 people got on and 1 got off. At stop 3, 2 people got on. 1 person was carrying a bag and the person with the red hat got off. At stop number 4, nobody got on or off the bus. At stop 5, an elderly man got on the bus with a cane. 2 people got off the bus. Now I want you to write this down. What is the bus driver's age? Give you another 2 seconds. All right, so for those of you who wrote down your age, you are right. For those of you who didn't write down your age, your personal age, you weren't listening. Let me read the very first point. You are the bus driver at stop number 1, is how the first bullet, the first point went. Here you are focusing on a webinar and your one job is to listen. I'm sure there are many of you on the line that didn't get it right. And I do this same exercise in large room settings and only a handful of people get this right. And the reason is that we're not focused in the moment. We're really not listening. And so you have to ask yourself, are you getting the message? Are you truly listening? And I know there's many things that are pressing against you, pushing back on your ability to listen effectively. But are you getting the message? So think about it. Our ability to listen and learn is becoming increasingly difficult due to the speed of business. Think about the stress and the pressures and everything else to get things done. But listening is the best skill that we actually have to learn about situations and people so that we can actually get things done. So let me give you a chance here. On your worksheet, effective listening. Rank yourself. How well are you truly listening in those important key moments? And then write down a few things you could change, something you work on right away. Another 15 or 20 seconds. Okay, good. So hopefully you've got something there. Look, you can go back to the workplace immediately following this. Practice listening. Think of one situation or one person. Focus your energies on changing your behavior on listening with just one person. And as you notice that, you will notice that person is going to react to you differently. They're going to see you differently. Listening is a huge trust builder in every organization. So let's go to the next point, understanding your audience. One of the most important things you can do is understand what motivates people around you. We're all motivated differently. We all see the world through a different filter, as I mentioned before. We're all wired differently. We all have different personalities. You put 5 people, 10 people in a room, share a story with them or have them witness something, you're going to get 5 to 10 different perceptions on what's going on. So as leaders, your job is to make sure that you're connecting yourself to the people around you. Now, we've given you a couple skills already, but understanding your audience is one of the most important, and I want to give you a framework to think about. If you're not familiar with DISC, it's a tool used to help understand how people interface, connect with the world around them, essentially what it is. There's many DISC assessments out there. I'm sure a few of you on the line have actually taken a DISC assessment, and it's really understand your style, your approach. And you'll see the letters D, I, S, and C, and there's some descriptors around the perimeter of the circle there. But let me just talk about the D, I, S, and C for a minute. The Ds of the world, these are the people that are highly driven to succeed, can be very impatient at times, and are ones that are thinking about results constantly. So it's not a bad or a good thing. It's just who you are. People will see the world through results. Oftentimes when faced with problems or issues, they'll go right to, what do we need to achieve? When are we going to get it done? How are we going to do that? And high Ds or deep or people that see the world through the D filter are ones that tend to be action oriented and like challenges, and you'll see some of the descriptors on the outside there. Your eyes of the world, your high eyes, actually let me go back to the D. D stands for dominance. Your I stands for inspirational. These are people who like to achieve through people. When faced with situations or problems, their first thought is, who do I need to work with? Who do I need to pull together? What group of people do I need to solve this problem? So they tend to be very encouraging, tend to be very optimistic, and collaborative. They can be high I's, who have a high I tendency, can be perceived at times as a little manipulative because they're trying to get things done through people. Don't take it that way. The intention isn't that way, but that's the way it can be taken at times. So what motivates them is getting things done, achieving through people, and a certain amount of recognition. The S's of the world, they're high S's, are the loyal, supportive types in the organization that get things done. They keep the organization running on time. Effectively, they're essentially keep the trains running on time. There's a process for everything. There's a system for everything. And high S's prefer not to see a lot of change, meaning they will change, but they don't like a lot of change, and you have to prove the effectiveness of change to high S's. So if you think about working with someone who's a high S, what do you want to do? You want to speak in terms of a process orientation. You want to be organized. Do not work with an S, or do not present to an S in an unorganized fashion. They don't like it. They're not motivated by it. And they will look at you sideways and wonder what is going on. And then your high C's, actually another one for your S's, you'll see the reliability. So you get reliability, support, and collaboration. S's tend to be very loyal and reliable. Your high C's, highly analytical, detail-oriented, and a high precision for quality. Wonderful people, especially in technology-oriented organizations. You'll find a high C's in quality groups, engineers, all those sorts of things. The high C's are masters with data and not manipulating, but analyzing data. Actually manipulating data at times to make sure they understand it. High C's will drive everyone else crazy at times because they overanalyze at times. So it's about taking the good and the bad. Now, we don't fall into just one of these buckets neatly. All of us fall into a few of the four different buckets. But there's going to be two that are going to be higher than the others typically. So when you look at yourself, you're going to see the world through your filter, how you interface with the world, and that's the way you're motivated. There are others who are motivated differently. If you want to communicate with others in an influential way, learn about what motivates them. Look for the habits and the behaviors that will indicate to you what drives them. So this is a very simple framework to use to understand how can I be more influential with others. And if you think about it, and people will say to me, Dave, why do I have to change to get others to change? The answer is because it's the only way to do it. You can't force people to change. You can only influence them. You can influence them to get better. You can influence their behavior through your changes in behavior. And I will guarantee this, and you can call me up and tell me I'm wrong, and please do if this is the case. But I guarantee if you focus on building a relationship with one person by understanding yourself and understanding them through the different motivators, and you adjust your approach to match to theirs just a little bit and do it consistently over time, you will find that you'll bring them your way. They will start seeing the world the way you hope they see it. So I'd like you to give that a try. I mean, that'd be a great exercise for everybody on the line here to think about. And actually, what a great thing for you to do would be to think about what are your top two descriptors. Pick one relationship, one of your most important relationships you want to improve in the organization. Pick their two top descriptors, and then figure out what you can do to improve your approach to working with that person and building that relationship. So on your worksheet, item 3, understanding your audience. Give yourself a grade. How good are you at reading and understanding your audience? And not just the audience broadly, but individuals. I'll give you 20 seconds. Go ahead. All right, wonderful. Let's move on to the next topic here. We've got 2 more to go, and then we're going to take some questions. We're actually doing quite well. We're right on time. I want to talk about how you articulate your message, the mechanics of communication. You might think it's simple. It's not. We are misunderstood every single day. And as leaders, it's critical to understand what has an impact on your leadership communication. Now, if you think about it, in a face-to-face communication, and this also occurs through email and on the phone, but it's different because sometimes it's not real time. Face-to-face, you can understand how this works. But if you think about in any particular conversation, whether you're trying to influence someone else or someone else is trying to influence you, there is a sender and a receiver. You're speaking in words. And each individual has their filter, the way they see the world, their paradigm of thinking, which is things like attitudes, beliefs, motives, experience, so on and so forth. And as the message is received, the individual interprets that message based on their, how they see the world. Now, if that person is not in a good mood, is angry with you, and or is distracted in general, they're not going to receive the message effectively. They're not going to receive it the way you perceived it, or pardon me, the way you intended it. They're going to perceive it differently. That's a bad thing. So this is important for really everybody in the organization to understand it, but it starts with one person at a time. Okay, so the sender sends the message, the receiver receives it, and of course they interpret it. There's a perception. They're going to fire back, meaning they're going to respond, and they're going to respond based on what they've perceived. If they've misperceived something, the conversation is immediately off track and it's not going in the right direction. So it takes 2 people to have an effective conversation, but it only takes 1 to perfect it, to really work at it. Because if you look at the message, there's the words, but there's also things like tone of voice, facial expressions, body language, any kind of social content, what's going on in the organization. And there are various opportunities, tons of opportunities for this conversation or this influential communication to go wrong. So let's talk about communication for a minute. If you haven't seen this, you'll recognize it right away as soon as I put it up here. But the question is, how much of a message or the delivery is words? And you're going to be amazed to realize that the words is only 7% of the communication. 7%. So think about how damaging email can be, because you don't hear tone and you don't see body language. That's why writing an email is so critical for leaders. Don't send off a nastygram. Think hard about the individual you're sending the message to, what motivates them. This is both email, in person, on the telephone. You have to consider, what is it this other person, how are they going to perceive this? Now, if you don't know this person, well, you need to, it's going to be something you're just going to have to guess at. But I think what you have to consider here is, how can I be truly influential in my approach to working with people? And part of this is I have to understand my tone. I have to understand how people are going to see me. I have to recognize that body language is a big piece of it. And if your body language doesn't match the intent of the message, as leaders, we are confusing our employees. We're not tapping into their full potential. We're not inspiring them. We're not motivating them. And it's critical that you think about how you are viewed through the non-verbal cues in delivering your message. It has everything to do with how are you delivering the message. All right. So let's give you an opportunity to think about how well you do in terms of clearly articulating your point of view or message. Item 4 in your worksheet, give yourself a ranking 1 to 10. How well do you do? And of course the question is, well, how do I know how well I'm doing? Well, you might want to ask. You might want to get feedback from people around you. It's the best way to learn how well you're doing. Oh, and by the way, don't forget, any more answers on our poll question? Would love to see more. Give me like 10 or 15 seconds here. Give it a shot. All right, great. So hopefully you've got something down there in articulating your message. It's not as difficult as it seems, but it can be more difficult than you think at times, especially when you're under pressure. If we don't have the awareness that I talked about earlier, what happens sometimes is we just talk at people rather than communicating with them and trying to have a true experience in that particular moment in time. Is the intention of my message being received? And it is. That is the responsibility of the person delivering the message. And I say this to all the people I work with, whether I'm training them or coaching them. I'll put the responsibility on you because you have full control of yourself. You don't have control of others. However, if you will impact others. You will impact others' behavior through how you behave yourself as leaders. All right, so let's go on to the final point here, and this is all about making sure that your intention as an individual is to understand, is there a true reciprocal arrangement going on? And this oftentimes happens one-on-one, but it can even happen in a group environment where there might be a challenge that's being overcome, trying to be overcome, a problem that's trying to be solved. But as an individual, your responsibility first is to listen. If anyone has read Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, seek first to understand, then to be understood. And it's that crossover here on my illustration. It's that understanding. Do we understand each other? Do we understand what each of us is trying to achieve? Where we're headed? Are we putting the other person's needs first before ours, or as a minimum, are we at least putting the other person's needs on par with our own? Because what I've illustrated here, that understanding overlap, it happens more rarely than you might think. Oftentimes it's compromise, but are we truly getting that synergistic element that comes with it? So I want you to think about, if you're trying to achieve, are you trying to achieve in the best interest of the organization? Are you truly trying to be collaborative in your approach with solving problems or innovating? Constructive criticism and, constructive criticism as well as differences of opinion are, if one received well and if handled well, are a wonderful approach to driving organizational performance through improvement. But it's also a huge element of innovation. That's how companies innovate, is by challenging one another. I'll put 2 heads, 3 heads against one any day over the long run to produce better products, come up with better solutions to solve problems more effectively. And it's really, really quite critical that we do those sorts of things. Here's a great example. Think about, in every organization, you've got a sales organization and you have an operations group that has to deliver your service or product. And there's a natural tug and pull between sales and operations. Sales is telling operations to produce faster, and operations is telling sales to either speed up, sell more, or sell less. We can't keep up, or hey, we have excess capacity. And it's that real symbiotic relationship that the two organizations have. But if it weren't, if there weren't a truly collaborative environment where the mutual outcome, mutual beneficial outcome is trying to achieve, it's really about delivering value to the customer. That's the outcome. Yes, the company, if the company does that, has happy customers, happy employees, yes, the company is going to have strong revenues and everything else. That's fine. But what are we trying to achieve as an organization? So that's a great example. So, a question for you: are you and your leaders fully engaged in achieving mutual understanding, whether it's yourself or your employees. So take your worksheet. This will be the last one. Achieving a mutually positive outcome. How well do you do it? How well do you really take the time and energy and focus on the other individual? Are you seeking to understand before you're trying to be understood? I'll give you 10 or 15, let's say 20 seconds. Go ahead. All right, I'm just going to hit a couple more things here, folks. Let me just do a quick summary for you, and then I'm going to share the poll questions, the answers to the poll question, and then we'll take a few questions. First of all, summary: being aware of your leadership style, very important. Be aware of your own. Being self-aware is absolutely critical. What's my style? When am I truly effective? And what do I need to work on? Secondly, listen for meaning. Absolutely listen for meaning in terms of what the person is trying to say. Some people aren't quite as articulate as you might be, and they do. People don't always get the meaning out the way you hope they would. Listen. Be patient. Item 3, understand your audience. We talked about that in quite a bit of detail. If you don't understand your audience, you don't know what motivates them, it's going to be very difficult for you to appeal to them and build trust. Communicate with more than just your words, okay? Very important. Does your body language match? Does your tone match? Does the person see you as that inspirational or influential leader that you want them to see you as? And then finally, seek to understand, then to be understood. Straightforward. Let me share the broadcast results, and you can see. Hopefully, they've come up. Like I said, this is a new system. If it hasn't, one of my hosts can help me out here. But here are just a few of the answers that came through. We can't show them all, but I can show a few of them. Turnover in leadership seems to be a big deal for some people. Constant change, yes, absolutely. I see it all the time. It's one of those things where most organizations are going to deal with it. Technology is driving a massive amount of change. Global markets, the world economy, driving change. Unfortunately, we're going to have to get used to it, and that's why leadership is critical in terms of improving. Holding people accountable to tasks as a challenge in leadership. Yes, accountability to organizations is critical. What I always say is build a culture of accountability. Knowledge transfer within organizations. Yes, we don't have a whole lot of time to spend on knowledge transfer. Some of us have knowledge management systems, but we are challenged today with leaders in higher leadership positions. They're starting to retire today, and it's one of those things that we're going to have to work on. And then finally, keeping a team focused without micromanaging the process. And I think we might be having troubles with the showing the results here, but I am reading them to you. Keeping a team focused without micromanaging the process, yes, absolutely. For those of you who are managers, leaders, and are control freaks, hey, I fall into that category. I have no issue saying it. It's one of those things I'm always working on, trying not to control every single situation. Yeah, it can be tough. And for those who are demand results, demand positive outcomes, it's really, really quite important that we look at it and allow people to make mistakes at times. So with that, I am going to open it up to just a couple questions. Joe, if you wouldn't mind jumping in here and helping me out.
Certainly, David. Going back to the DISC method, have you seen high Cs successfully move to a 30,000-foot level in their leadership growth?
I have, but it is very, very deliberate on their part, meaning they over time they develop high self-awareness. High Cs, depending what their other characteristic letters are. Oftentimes high Cs aren't the outgoing, gregarious type, and they tend to be more cerebral. So what they do is they do focus on understanding their high precision detail orientation, and they don't overplay it. I mean, it's a solid strength, and they try not to overplay that strength, and they do that through their self-awareness, and make sure that And I'll use the level 5 leadership characteristics of professional will, the desire to succeed, and then but maintaining that humility, so they find a balance in other ways. But the hard part for them is not digging back into the detail. What people will know is it's oftentimes the high D's and the high I's that go on to higher levels of leadership. But absolutely, I've seen C's do it, and it's not as, I want to say it's not as common. It just requires a little more deliberate approach to honing their leadership style.
Excellent. Continuing on the kind of a follow-up, pressure and stress is a major factor in our business. There's not enough people to get everything done. I like this approach, but with all the pressure, it's easier just to tell employees what to do. What are your thoughts on this topic?
Yes, I agree. It is easier, but that is not a sustainable approach to running your business. I mean, certainly if you're telling people what to do, you've got a bunch of people running around, pawns or robots, getting things done, but you can't be, as leaders, you can't watch people 24/7. You have to allow them to make decisions. You have to allow them to flex their own muscle in terms of their discretionary time. So you want inspired employees who understand why they're doing what they're doing, how their contribution matters, how they're contributing to the value of the organization. So if you want the latter, which most leaders do, because that allows for the multiplication effect. What you want to do is you want to provide direction. Just telling people what to do, well, there's a time and a place. If there's a critical situation, an emergency, that's a great time to tell people what to do. But in the long run, it doesn't get you to where you want to be. Your people aren't learning, they're not growing, they're not reaching their full potential. And realistically, that's what you need if the organization is going to grow. Especially today, with the talent pool not growing, it's actually shrinking. We need to keep our best talent. We need to make sure the talent that we have today is going to the next level.
Looks like we're close to time, but I think we have time for one more. This kind of goes back to the very beginning of the presentation. How can you be tough on your employees without being a jerk sometimes?
Being tough and being a jerk are really two different things. If you set clear expectations, tap into what motivates people, and consistently communicate in a respectful way, employees will respond to toughness. Toughness is not being rude or mean. It's just being demanding in what you need. All employees want to succeed in some fashion, right? It's just a matter of giving them the direction, affirming their accomplishments, and helping them when they're not measuring up. So, being a jerk at times is really more aimed at how you're treating people, how you communicate. Being tough is certainly a little different. So, I think there's a clear differentiator there.
Excellent. It's just 3 o'clock. Do you think we have time for one more?
Yeah, why don't we squeeze one in? I think we started about a minute after.
Excellent. All right, I have one last question here. It seems to be different for everybody. How do you know what motivates people?
Well, that's it's a good question. We talked a little bit about that with DISC. But first you have to have the right leadership mindset, and what I mean is you have to think about the other person's needs more than your own. So what's driving that person? So you have to really pay attention. It's asking questions. It's listening carefully for meaning. It's trying to understand how the other person thinks, solves problems, and evaluates their own success. If you study the person, and that doesn't mean you have to spend hours and hours studying them, but if you just pay attention to their behaviors and their style, and using the DISC framework, it helps you put labels on things so you know what is actually driving people, then it's a lot easier. Essentially it comes down to basic human needs, accomplishing things, being recognized, making progress, and and those are the things that motivate people mostly. So, oftentimes people say, well, it's money, and you know what? At the end of the day, yeah, people need money, but it's not a major motivator. Is that it?
I think that will do it. If anybody didn't get their question answered, please feel free to email it to David, and he'll get back to you directly. But it's just 3:02, so I think we're about ready to wrap it up.
Why don't we, Emily, if you're there, maybe you could just let us know when the next webinar is for people on the line. We'll certainly be sending out invitation, but what's the title of the next webinar and the date?
Can everyone hear me okay?
Yep.
It is Impact Make It Happen, and it's February 17th at 2 p.m.
And just so people understand what that is going to be geared towards helping leaders, specifically being impactful in the organization and having an impact on results, as well as people who report to them and their peer group. So we do hope to hear from you, or hear from you again later in the month. Sorry we got delayed, so we're going to have 2 in February, but we'll keep it on time. Thanks for your attendance today. Really appreciate it. Stay tuned for more communication. We'll make sure everything is available as a download. And if anyone has any questions after today's webinar, please feel free to reach out. We can chat by phone or by email, whatever is easier for you. Thanks very much. Have a great day.